welcome to another episode of Legacy Speaks. After months of waiting, the iconic story of Black Panther and Wakanda has been released on screens to the masses, and it's been pandemonium. All over the internet, you'll see so many beautiful black and brown people filling up theaters to the max. From church bands to full-blown drum ceremonies, we are letting AMC, Regal Cinemas, and every other film screening know that we did not come to play. This movie has definitely lived up to its hype, but honestly, this film was deeper than a lot of people expected, and I'm all for it. Shout out to Ryan Coogler, Marvel, Disney, and the entire cast for bringing this story to life and dropping some major knowledge. So today I'm highlighting 3 gems from the movie Black Panther. But before we start, I need you to hit that subscription button below. That way you can stay up to date on newly released content on a regular basis. So let's dive right in. Gem number 1, create your own legacy. Let me start off by saying that I am going to try my very best to make this as spoiler free as possible, but I'm totally judging you if you haven't seen the movie yet. I kid. Not really. But at the beginning of the movie, we find T'Challa coming to grips with the loss of his father, as he's also preparing to be crowned as king. This is something that he has been groomed for his entire life, but he's still speaking spiritual guidance from kings before him so that he can rule Wakanda well. Unfortunately, throughout the movie, he finds out that his father was not quite the man, let alone king, he thought he was, and that completely wrecks his overall perception of him. At some point in our lives, we find ourselves being disappointed by the people we look up to. Whether it's a celebrity, mentor, family member, or even a friend, there are times when we realize that this person we once idolized has skeletons of their own. Speaking from experience, there are a handful of people that I want to model myself after because of the positive influence that they've had over my life when I was younger. However, there were some character flaws that I personally really couldn't get down with, and it makes you question whether that person was lying to you all this time, you know. And at the end of the day, it also makes you want to reevaluate whether or not you truly knew them to begin with. For T'Challa, he was at the point of, how can I carry this torch of a man who damn near burnt our country down with one decision? And as difficult that may be, it's important to remember that nobody is perfect. I know that's a bit cliche, but it's the truth. A woman from my previous church once told me that people do people things, and that stuck with me forever. I think we get so caught up in praising a person to the point that when they do make a mistake, it's like a slap in the face. So wait, you're trying to tell me that you aren't invincible and you can actually do wrong? All this time you've been human just like me? The audacity. Pause. It's funny that we have these expectations for other people, but fail to hold ourselves accountable to the same standards.
Message.
But yes, these new revelations can really have us shook, and it's okay. It may be disappointing in the moment, but learn from it and move on. The great thing is you control your own destiny, and you have the power to make choices that will help you end the domino effect that they started. Their mistakes are not your mantle or burden to carry. Change begins with you, and you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. Yeah, this person did X, Y, and Z, but what legacy are you going to leave? Gem number 2, sharing resources with others. This is major key because we can see this all over the globe today. Political leaders are constantly going back and forth on the concept of helping other nations in need. Naturally, one would think that if someone was seeking help and you have the means to provide them with it, then the answer should be an automatic yes. But from a political standpoint, that can be a bit tricky even in a fictional world like Wakanda. Wakanda is known for its vibranium and advanced technology, but it closes itself off from the world and only gets involved when necessary. This doesn't sit too well with a number of the characters because they feel like Wakanda could be doing more to save lives instead of being a bystander to the evils of the world. As tradition goes, living behind a force field is not out of selfishness, but rather an act of ensuring safety. If the world found out what they truly had, people with ill intentions would be flocking all over just to rape them of their resources. And I don't blame them because colonists have been stripping Mother Africa of precious jewels, metals, herbs, and animals for centuries. Someone also pointed out that if we let people in, they will bring their problems with them, and that is a good point because we don't ever want to get to a place of deficiency when trying to save others. But if you're in a position to help those who are suffering, will you continue to allow them to struggle? And like I mentioned, we can see that live in full effect in today's society. There are people literally risking their lives to get to the land of the free and the home of the brave, looking to get a piece of the American dream, yet this nation's president is doing everything in his power to keep them out. The way this country treats immigrants and refugees is ridiculous. Hell, the way this country treats its own US citizens is beyond me. Let's not forget how number 45 approached hurricane relief aid for Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. And for those who are asleep in geography class, these are 2 US territories that he didn't even know were under our care. It doesn't just stop at the United States. It can be seen in the way some countries treat displaced people who are trying to escape from war and persecution throughout Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Africa. It's wild. It's time for us to rethink the way that we distribute aid to one another. We are all a part of the human race. Take care of home front first, yes, I agree, because we can't welcome in guests until our issues are under control. But in the midst of restructuring, I employ every leader of every nation to create enough cushion to be able to help neighboring nations as well. Gem number 3, nobody, and when I say nobody, nobody wins when the family feuds. Now, this lesson is something that deeply touches me to my core, and I am absolutely in love with the way Black Panther depicts this issue. Wakanda is comprised of 5 clans living in harmony. Then some series of events happen where the throne gets overthrown by an outsider who really isn't even an outsider. Y'all, this is so difficult. I'm trying to be so respectful to y'all lakeovers, but basically what it really boils down to is family matters. And as I was watching this all go down, I kept thinking about Family Feud by Jay-Z and Beyonce. It's interesting to see how a poor decision made out of good intent can wreak so much havoc on both those who are indirectly and directly involved. But let's look at this from a bigger picture, shall we? This concept also speaks to the strained dynamics between Africans and Black Americans and how we are so divided by negative perceptions of one another. As Black Americans, we perpetuate stereotypes that make Africans seem like primitive beings who just race with gazelles and kick it with their pet lions. Or we believe that daytime commercials of malnourished women and children is a representation of all of Africa. I'm a 90s baby, and I could tell you this, there was no type of African pride back in the day whatsoever. Other ethnicities were so afraid to say where they were from originally because Black Americans would call you African booty scratcher, say you had AIDS, or try to jump you. And it's so crazy now because I'm having these conversations with my friends from like Nigeria, South Africa, and even Ethiopia, and I feel so ashamed because of what they had to go through as well as their parents at the hands of those who had the same skin complexion as them. On the flip side, my brothers and sisters from Africa have taken on the negative perception of Black Americans from white Americans. I feel like those from Africa try to distance themselves from us because Black Americans are portrayed as lazy, ignorant, uneducated thugs and ghetto chicks with no work ethic who are dependent on welfare and food stamps. Every time we hear the terms kings and queens, it's always with regards to what people of color used to be before we were taken away from our villages. It's never in reference to being a Black American because to many, we lost our position of power, traditions, and cultural identity with every form of degradation we had to experience as property on a plantation. Even in the movie, they address the fact that we aren't fully accepted and are seen as lost, and I truly commend the directors for pointing that out. And in true fashion, white America has taken that and ran with it to create further division between us. First it was light skin versus dark skin, and once we've begun to heal in that area, now it's African versus Black American. You're not truly from Africa. You don't even know what tribe you're from. You don't even know any name to any African city, let alone any country on that continent. I mean, well damn, are we playing how African are you or what? Because I shouldn't have to prove how dark or deep my roots are. And I tell this story all of the time because I still can't believe it happened. But I always refer to myself as African American because I'm more than just a shade or a color. And although I was born in America, my ancestral roots are of African descent. In college, I was told you are Black. Stop it. Stop calling yourself African American. Your parents are Black. Your grandparents are Black. Your great grandparents were Black. You weren't born in Africa, so stop it. And this was coming from a member of our African Student Association. From there, I started feeling like, okay, so just because my ancestors were captured during the slave trade, that automatically cancels out all of my African ancestry. I'm confused. Once again, it's coming from a standpoint of emphasizing pure Africans over being Black American. I've even seen or heard Black Americans try to disassociate themselves from the term African American as a means to stress our citizenship and our inalienable rights to white people. I can go on and on about this topic because we're in a time where Black pride has skyrocketed like never before, but I also want to address the division within Black culture due to our ethnic backgrounds. This constant separation keeps us so siloed, which doesn't do any of us any good. Our greatness is limited when we don't come together as one, but in order to do that, we have to take the blinders off and have real cross-cultural conversations like these. I love seeing African brothers and sisters stand with us on issues like police brutality and racism, and I love seeing African Americans stand with those in Africa on issues like modern day slavery, genocide, and apartheid. We are both experiencing systemic oppression in some manner, but imagine how we could all change that if the family wasn't feuding. See, I told y'all this movie has some major gems. I hope I didn't leak anything for those who didn't watch it. This movie is definitely a classic, and I don't usually buy DVDs, but I definitely plan on purchasing it for the vault. I was so proud of the representation of this film, especially for Black women. I was really getting emotional in the theater. From the beautiful sights of Wakanda to seeing the fierce Black girl magic and Black boy joy, I was completely overwhelmed. Here is a film that shows people of my skin complexion, of my heritage, being strong, intelligent leaders and warriors in comparison to all the movies that typically cast us as slaves, prisoners, criminals, and even sexual objects. It's just brilliant, and I really do hope that this not only helps our youth, but adults recognize the power that we have as a people. In the midst of all the rhetoric about nations that are asshole countries, in the midst of systemic oppression and overt racism, this movie is everything. So before I close, I just want to ask, what's next? Let's not let this movie's message be in vain. Don't just make Wakanda Forever go viral as we post photos in our African fashion. It needs to be a lifestyle. Doing it for the culture is about taking pride in who we are as a people and working collectively regardless of what corner of the earth we come from. Once we begin to do that, the things we can accomplish are limitless. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Legacy Speaks. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to stay connected via Legacy SBKS on everything. Until next time.